Now the fun is going to start, because I love chairing panels, and we're no doubt going to have a really, really good debate this morning. So hopefully we will get some more people in. Some people are edging to get on the panel before I've even presented them. So for that reason, in reverse order, what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about why has transport emerged as a rapidly growing vertical for PMR and broadband. Very interesting, because certainly in the TETRA space, transportation users and customers are the second fastest growing area. Public safety clearly is first, but we've seen trains and metros, buses, even taxi companies, ports, harbours, and particularly airports as growing areas for critical communications, and particularly TETRA. So let's have a bit of a debate about this, and let's see whether we can have some interesting views from our esteemed panelists. And firstly, I'd like you all please to welcome TETRA super duper user Jason Trimmer from Heathrow Airport, who's flown in specially to sit on this panel with us. So thank you very much, Jason. Please clap and welcome Jason to the panel. Pick a seat, Jason, any seat you would like, my friend. There's plenty to choose from.
What a choice.
And then, because I'm very good at twisting people's arms, and I thought it would be good to get somebody else on the panel with a slightly different view, and he said to me, don't ask me any technical questions, but I'm actually going to ask Jackson to come on the panel. So there you are, look at the look and some of the faces at the front, like, wow, what did we get Jackson on the panel for? Jackson talks to lots of people involved in transportation all the time, so he thought, let's get Jackson on the panel and we can ask him some questions, anything we want. And then finally, my good friend and colleague and vice chairman of the transport group, keeps me in tow most of the time, Mr. Tony Gray. And then we have a few other hidden panelists in the audience who will no doubt get picked on during this panel session, because we're going to try to keep to time, gents, aren't we? So we've got a couple of questions here. First one. What?
We've got another panelist, Jochen. Nokia.
Jochen from Nokia.
Jochen.
Oh, I forgot the panelist, Jochen from Nokia. Come on up. Oh dear. He wasn't on my list. I thought you were giving the next presentation.
No, I don't know.
Right.
Okay.
You're not relaxed anymore, Jochen.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, so there we are. So we've got TETRA super user, esteemed colleague and TETRA advocate, Jochen from Nokia at the end, and Jackson to give us a totally different view from his side of things. So firstly, what I want to talk about is have PMR technologies reached the limit, certainly in terms of transport? So PMR technologies and transportation users. Tony.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to say that I think it's a bit of a false premise to start with. Is PMR emerging as a fast-growing market? It always has been a big market, and it remains a big market. But what we are seeing is, as in the whole of the rest of the PMR market, the transition to digital. So, and Phil Kidner's just left the room, and he knows the statistic, but I think it's something like 40% of the world's PMR is still analog. But that is increasing in transition rate towards TETRA and other lesser digital solutions. So I guess my answer to your question, Robin, is, you know, people in the transportation sector, just as in any other sector, are going to be exploring the capabilities of the new technologies that they're adopting. And eventually, inevitably, they'll come to the edge of that. But I think there's still a long way to go with people adopting TETRA in the transportation market until they find that edge where they start to say, we could do with some broadband here. And in that respect, I'm particularly interested to hear what Jason has to think, because Jason, you're putting TETRA in right now in Heathrow, and I imagine, without putting words in your mouth, that you're not thinking too much about broadband for the meantime.
Certainly not. So, 20 years ago, Heathrow put in an analogue system, an MPT 1327 system, and we are just in the process now of swapping that out to TETRA. So we are busy with design, and we plan to implement TETRA next year, and that will be our workhorse at the airport for mission critical comms, business critical comms for the next 10 to 15 years. It's been a long time coming. The analogue system has, done what it had to do, but we have critical needs and it doesn't suit our purposes any longer. Analogue has some, some deficiencies in terms of what we need right now. So we need some further resilience. The equipment that's in place at the moment is end of life, and it's not supported by the vendor any longer. And as you know, airports are a growing vertical, and we don't feel that it suits our needs. So whilst it's done a fantastic job, and it does what it says on the tin pretty much, voice, but that's about it. So in terms of risk to the business, it's quite a big risk at the moment. The Civil Aviation Authority, we have a mandate from those guys in order to provide reliable mission critical service capability to the airport fire and rescue services. So those guys are my top priority. So if we can't provide a reliable radio service, and this gets right down to basics, a kilometre towards the end of the runway, then we cannot operate Heathrow as an aerodrome in old money, in old speak. So airports, Heathrow would not exist. Anything else that goes around, that's wrapped around the airport, wouldn't happen. So it goes right back to basics. So without a reliable communication system, Heathrow would not operate. So it would be non-existent. So really for us as a business, the business drivers for the TETRA deployment were capacity and resilience. So airports traditionally, they rely on mature, proven technology. We're certainly not an organisation that implements cutting-edge technology. At the end of the day, we move passengers and baggage, and it's that basic. And we need reliable communications with huge amounts of resilience in place in order for that to happen.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to use this now. What can I let this sound, guys? Excellent in the back. I'm very impressed. Jackson, so you organise lots of these events over the years. You've had lots of papers, lots of submissions. I mean, your views and thoughts in terms of, do you see now that there is a real hiatus, as in, lots and lots of transportation type user cases and things out there? I mean, what's some of your highlights that you pick up on?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So for me as an event organizer, I'm in no way an expert in the field like these guys, but we have an opportunity to speak to lots of end users and find out what the trends are. And I think with the transport sector, you find this huge move, obviously with Heathrow, towards TETRA technologies and moving away from analog. And I think that's a huge need for people. And Jason mentioned a few of the points and the reasons why. And you obviously see it moving into markets where it's not been available before. So, for example, in the US, there's a number of case studies of transportation hubs, if you like, that have this huge need. And are looking around at what can meet their needs, and they're moving towards TETRA. So New Jersey, I think New York as well, and that's also shown in Asia. So it'll be very, very interesting next year with CCW being in Hong Kong to see a number of those case studies from the transport sector coming and moving towards sort of TETRA technologies. And I think the really, really interesting question is, going forward past TETRA, what are the transportation needs? Is it very similar to PPDR groups and their move towards broadband? I think yesterday we had a lot of talks about public safety and the need for broadband, and it's interesting to see transport sort of follow suit.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, where I sort of sit and see the whole talk about multimodal communications, Hong Kong is a very good example of multimodal transport networks. You get off the bus, the train turns up. You get off one tube, the other one turns up. They're all joined up. Try and do that in London, no, not joined up. So the whole underpinning communications infrastructure that joins that all together enables that to happen, and the passenger clearly is key, just like in public safety. The end user and the lives you're saving is also key. So for me, multimodal communications and the underlying infrastructure that joins that up is important, and Hong Kong's a very good example of where that's a success. So that'll be good. Yesterday, Jochen, we heard about Noel and his whole piece about collaboration. It reminded me of a prime minister once, especially with the tie that he was wearing. But talk about Nokia and collaboration. You're obviously involved in the transport side. What do you pick up on out there in terms of what users are after, what users' needs are, what's important to the transport sector?
Yeah, let's say the difference from the transport sector compared to public safety is we have passenger in the transportation. So in passenger, the experience from the passenger or the passenger requirements are very much driven by what they experience when they out of the transportation system at home or at a nice location, so they experience broadband. From our perspective, although we are running the biggest TETRA network in the world, we think that broadband is something, or LTE is something, which is the way collaboration will, let's say, will evolve to. That means that, and we created some examples, so LTE, of course, is something which is very much available for mission-critical communication. I think some of you might have heard, we even run autonomous metros over LTE, so we have done a project with the Paris Metro. And let's say the beauty of this technology is you can put everything in under, let's say, one technology. And I'm not talking about the various operational models, if this is carrier-owned or dedicated. I think if you want to run let's say, a mission-critical infrastructure, it is hard to share this with, let's say, with users browsing the public internet. Yeah? So from that perspective, LTE is around for now, I don't know, 9 years since the early days. So the beauty of this is it really came down to a system level where it is affordable to deploy it also in very small scale from a carrier perspective part in a small scale, and it's very much highly reliable. So from that perspective, yes, broadband is required, but can also LTE can also serve mission-critical requirements very well today. So from that perspective, we see a move. In most of the cases, it's adding broadband. It's not, let's say, replacing TETRA networks, but the expectation is it will, of course, gradually evolve.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And there's a very good case study out there in Bilbao Metro with the TETRA network overlaid with an LTE network, and their views and thoughts in terms of what they're doing with broadband. Tony, come over to you, and you go out there and you talk at UIC conferences now, and we talk about collaboration, where we have very much joined forces with UIC and ERA with regards to GSMR and their evolution path from GSMR to LTE and Tony's been very heavily involved in that. And again, you go to some of these events and thoughts, everybody's talking about the evolution, from GSMR now, with those GSMR users. We obviously have our TETRA users, and quite a lot of them, high-speed rail, Malaysia Express Rail Link, I can think of Taiwan High-Speed Rail, who are purely stuck to using TETRA. They can't really think yet too much about the broadband world. They're going to wait for it to come along. But our UIC ERA colleagues very much driving forward to broadband. So what are they going to use broadband for, Tony?
Well, that's an extremely good question, Robin, and you know it's my hobby horse, so I'm glad to have the opportunity.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, as you rightly say, GSMR, which is the mandated communication technology for mainline trains in Europe, and is deployed, of course, worldwide, but not totally, is coming end of life. And there's no guarantee from any manufacturer that it'll be supported beyond 2030. So quite rightly, the International Rail Union, the UIC, together with the European Rail Agency, has started looking for the successor technology for GSMR. When they look at their use cases, what they actually need and want to do with radio, there's very, very little that is not capable to be done with something like TETRA, and indeed can be done today with GSMR, especially with GPRS bolted on top. So then you go, last week I went to an ETSI workshop in the ETSI headquarters in France, and about 90-odd rail users and technologists and standards people and so on, all getting together to say, okay, what do we need to do for the future rail replacement telecommunications radio technology? Again, no real use cases coming out saying we need so much bandwidth and we need 4G or whatever, but the logical choice, obviously, for something that's going to be implemented by about 2030 is 4G, is LTE. And by that time, we'll have got all the mission-critical features and functionality in for primarily PPDR that Dave Chaterley and the other good people in 3GPP SA6 are working so hard on today. But lo and behold, halfway through this workshop, real sort of end-user people start putting their hand up and saying, well, we've heard about this thing called 5G, so why don't we just wait for that? What do we want to fiddle around with something interim that's going to have to be replaced? And it's a complete misconception of the way Gs develop. We've all started with 2G phones, then we had 3G networks, but we were still using our 2G phones, and then we upgraded to a 3G capable device. Exactly the same is happening with 4G, and I predict, although nobody really knows what 5G is, I confidently predict that exactly the same will happen with 5G, 6G, 10, 11G, who knows. But for a rail user, and sorry, this is a bit of a hobby horse, so I bang on about it.
Carry on.
A rail user who doesn't have any real use case that goes beyond the capabilities of 2G to suddenly be saying, oh, I think I'll wait and see what happens with 5G is completely crazy in my mind. And so I'm working very hard to try to persuade these people that just because you need a computer and there's a new 10-core computer coming next year, you don't wait and get that 10-core. You take the 6-core that you can have today for the right price and actually do your work on. And exactly the same concept applies to radio communications. So I believe the rail users and probably some of the other users who are on legacy technologies will be able to apply mission-critical LTE when all the work is done on the standards and manufacturers actually pick those standards up and produce equipment. But to sit on your hands and say, no, I think I'll wait for the next one, that's probably going to be better, it would be crazy.
Thanks, Tony. I think a round of applause. God.
Do you mind if I nick some of your water?
Go for it.
A very, very interesting comment there, particularly Tony. And I mean, what I was going to say is over the years we've seen certainly the rail and metro people move from PMR to TETRA and do some very innovative things with TETRA. Now, equally, we're seeing some of them, just look at bolting on LTE for CCTV and some specific applications almost as pilots. We're now seeing airports, growing more and more. We see more and more contracts placed with airports around the world, and a bit like Jason and Heathrow moving to TETRA. I mean, do you guys find that all this technology blurb, I'll call it blurb, just sort of confuses the users and the operators and what they really want, 5G, 6G, 10G? And in a minute, I'm going to jump into the audience and pick on some people. So don't leave, because I'm going to ask the same question about these future Gs and particularly users and where user requirements and case studies and things are coming from. Do you find it confuses things, or do you think it's better to say, what's your mission, what's your problem, how do you solve it? What's your thoughts?
I would echo Tony's comments. We're bombarded daily, almost constantly, with the latest and the greatest, and this is just what we see. So people take those comments and what they're bombarded with and try and apply it to their work. So it can be quite confusing for the end user. So I've been fortunate enough to visit Bilbao and to see the LTE deployment there, concept in transport, and it's very compelling, I have to say, and it will be a success, and I can definitely see some use cases there. Broadband does give you an extra sense, so it gives you vision, it gives you sight, and I can definitely see where that can be employed at Heathrow in a mission critical sense. So my main top customer is Airport Fire and Rescue Services, and at the moment it may be laughable, we're talking about constant bombardment by new technologies. The Airport Fire Rescue Services still take information down using a pencil and paper. What we're doing at the moment, we're going from analog to TETRA with all its capabilities. That is a massive step change for us, and that is narrow band technology, a 25 kilohertz channel, and I think although they won't struggle to use it, it will be a fantastic advancement of technology, albeit 20-year-old technology, and suitable for what we need to do today. So just going back to Bilbao, trains, vision, sight, what they've got going there is a train operation with LTE onboard cameras within the cabs, so the train driver can actually see what's going on in the cabs behind him. And in a control centre, we have the holistic view of the train passing through all of the different tube stations. And like I said, that gives you sight, an extra sense. If you actually took that away, then people are blind. They cannot see. So I think it's important. I think that will be one of the massive benefits to the critical user community, just by having that. So I can see our Airport Fire Rescue Services utilising something like that in the future in terms of responding to an unplanned event on the runway, and being able to have their rescue services inside an aircraft, whereby normally the fire ground commander would only be able to speak and hear to his resources inside the aircraft. Inside an aircraft, there is an awful lot going on. However, if you have vision and sight inside the aircraft as a fire ground commander, then you will be able to make key informed decisions as to what to do next. So you have a firefighter inside an aircraft, putting out the fire. That's his or her main job, their role. They extinguish the fire, save life. However, possibly a body-worn camera, the fire ground commander can understand the situation and make, I guess, split-second decisions on what to do next, rather than have to wait on a report from one of the fire crew as to what to do next. And quite literally, we all know that split seconds, without sounding too dramatic, can actually save lives.
That's a good one, isn't it? Connection saves lives. And I guess what you're saying there is, we talked the question, will TETRA become the go-to technology? Well, we think it is already. And therefore, we almost go into the hybrid now, and we talk about the evolution where these technologies come together. And what you're saying is, don't blur it too much, but basically look at what the user needs are, what you need to do, use the best mix of technologies. Jochen, from your point of view, do you see these customers knocking on your door saying, I want 5G, 6G, 7G, or are you guys saying, no, we're going to offer you fit-for-purpose technology to meet your needs? What's your view when these guys come knocking on the door and tell you they want 10G or whatever it is next?
Okay, so let me first comment on this XG discussion. Yeah. So indeed, the telecommunication world has not made everything right. Yeah, you might remember there were a big hype with 3G will solve all our communication issues, and at the end of the day, I think when we introduced LTE, it became reality. So from that perspective, and yes, the technologies from 2G to 3G, they were not really able to mix. So what is different now in 5G, and this is the first release, and we have every 10 years a new release so far. So in change of the decade, we'll introduce 5G, and with 5G, it is it's a combination of different air interfaces. So 5G will be the air interface of 4G will be part of 5G. So that means. But we are adding, and yesterday there were a nice slide, we are adding additional possibility in air interfaces which will, help users in getting more bandwidth with probably less mobility realized. So from that perspective, we learned out of this, and I think 5G is the first mobile standard which is very much oriented on industrial use cases and no longer oriented on giving the consumer simply more bandwidth. So that's a fundamental change from, all the releases of the mobile network before. Talking about customers, indeed, I think the GSMR is a very good example. And yes, we have the discussion with all our customers asking us, okay, what is next after GSMR? Of course, we have the obligation. Of course, we agreed to this to, carry on GSMR for the next 15 years at least. We are still in rollouts. We are still starting rollouts for major railway operators in Europe because this is their standard and this needs to be supported. But customers and even airports, yes, indeed, knocking on our door saying, okay, we have so much different platforms, and always the answer to data service requirements where we deploy Wi-Fi. Yeah, and with Wi-Fi, because it's an unlicensed spectrum, you have all the issues with interference. So you might like to connect your back scanner when you load an aircraft over Wi-Fi, depending which aircraft you have in front of you, it works or it works not. So from that perspective, there is a demand from our customers knowing, okay, what can we do with the technology which is here today? They are less interested in, okay, what can we do with 5G? Yeah, although it is at the horizon, but if we explain that 4G will be part of 5G with some enhancement in 5G, which major enhancement in 5G is on air interface and system architecture, I think they are okay with this. It's not, we give the confidentiality that 4G is not, at that part or at that end, something like this.
Okay. So whatever's into 4G is 5G and 6G, and when I get to 10G, yeah.
I want to tease Jackson and
Well, I was gonna ask
his
Jackson that
organisation, because they can only run events if they can keep advancing the technology. So suddenly it's not 4G world, it's 5G world.
Somebody once...
It's all your fault, Jackson.
Somebody once told me that LTE meant long-term employment.
My fault.
Got a laugh, didn't it? Got a laugh. So, Jackson, I mean, again, yep, you know, you've got to organise these conferences for us, and I think you do a grand job, you know that. But you know, it's like, what's next? Do we go from TETRA to 4G to 5G and so on? Again, from what you see, you know, on a slightly different perspective, which is why I asked you to be on the panel. Do you think what's important to these end users, you know, the customers of these transport networks, and I'm going to come out there in a minute, so watch out. Do you think it's important about having, you know, fit-for-purpose technology that just does the job, or do you think, no, they should be off there in the clouds looking at 10G, 20G, 30G?
I think it's really interesting with when we talk about the transport sector, because we started off this panel discussion talking about how a number of end users are going from analog to TETRA, and that their needs have changed, that they need resilience and security. And then we're already at conferences like this talking about LTE and 5G, and I think Tony mentioned it earlier, where there's this misconception because actually they're not completely educated in, you know, they're not completely educated about 4G and 5G, and actually I'm just going to wait and I'm going to invest in 5G instead. And to me, that says, and you know, a number of people I speak to, you know, say very similar things, and to me that says, well, if there was a need, if it was really needed, well, surely they'd invest in it straight away. The fact that they're willing to wait or happy to wait, that says to me, well, maybe it's just something they want rather than need. And when we speak about broadband and want versus need, I think it's like in the commercial sector, when broadband came down, and we all have our smartphones with lots and lots of data. Before, it was nice to have. Now we've got it, we absolutely can't live without it. And I think that's something you could probably push over, you know, into transport and the other sectors where, you know, for Jason, obviously installing TETRA, that's something they needed, where analog didn't fit their requirements. Going to LTE, is it something where we're saying, well, I absolutely need this? And if that's what we're saying, then surely people would be running with it and investing in it straight away, rather than saying, well, maybe I could wait, and actually they're not completely educating themselves because it's not that important, maybe.
Okay. Excellent point. Want versus need. I like this. Now, we've got 15 minutes. So, we can do two things in this 15 minutes. One is that we can ask you if you've got any questions for the esteemed panel, which could be maybe 7 minutes of the 15 minutes. The other part could be that we all become one big mega panel. So you all get asked questions. Look at your faces. Wow. And we could ask that. So let's just see what the audience would like to do. And I particularly want to carry on that theme of want versus need, and I could see a few people in the audience who could have some questions. So any questions from the audience? Yeah, I'm actually going to be the microphone lady, okay? So, because I like walking out and about with the audience and becoming one. Oh. Sir, where were you? Who put the hand up? Yeah, sorry. Okay.
Don't show your feet.
Just see that there are more tendency to go for TETRA. My question is it because TETRA is a proven, like, let's say, security-wise more than any other network? I mean, why not LTE? I mean, maybe my question to Jason, why Heathrow will go for TETRA, not for LTE? Can we say that TETRA is the most secure network? Why not GPON plus MPLS? Or why not GPON and MPLS combined with LTE?
Robbins, can you repeat the question? Because it's not your fault, sir, but the acoustics here are
No,
very
that's
noisy.
fine. I can broadcast my voice. So, gentleman from Metalstat, why go for TETRA? You know, why? Is it because it's secure? Is it because it's got all these additional features? Why go for TETRA? Why not? Yeah, why not just use your mobile phone? Why not just go to Tandy, buy some walkie-talkies. Why TETRA? Why did you buy TETRA?
That's for you,
That's
Jason.
a very, very good question. Thank you for your question, by the way. TETRA. So, going back to, I guess, mission critical, the definition, and also the 5 flavours of it. So, coverage, availability, reliability, security, and group calls. That's exactly what we need at the moment. And I guess Heathrow, as a critical user of communications, we would only employ and implement a solution that is mature and well proven. So we've tested TETRA in the wider community for 20 years. Now we've decided to implement it. So it definitely is a safe case for us.
More secure than LTE. I picked that.
Yes, actually, for the meantime, it is. I believe, and Dave Chaser-Lee will tell us more, but I believe there's work going on right now to bring the level of security of LTE up to the sort of thing we've been used to with TETRA. But right now, today, the only solution you have, if you want secure, as you say, group communication, reliable, resilient, proven over 15 or more years, TETRA. Plus MPLS.
Sorry.
Okay, we can't hear you, but yeah. So
Plus MPLS,
I don't know the question. I'm
JPON
afraid.
plus a MPLS, yeah?
the fixed network.
So why not fixed networks and MPLS?
It's more secure.
More secure.
Fixed
They look
networks
confused, don't they?
networks.
rather than radio networks.
Yeah, Wi-Fi and all this stuff.
Talking about security, so let's go for JPON technology plus MPLS, and you can use Wi-Fi, WiMAX.
So
Dave, you're a technology
Well, I was
guru.
gonna
Help us out here.
Make Dave become the panel member quick.
Okay, so good morning. I'm Dave Chater-Lee. I have sat doing TETRA security for something over 20 years now. So some of the problems we want to solve are going to be different in a wireless network. It's securing that access and securing the capability of using the infrastructure, which is something you don't necessarily have on a fixed network. You have a direct connection onto a piece of wire, and so long as you've got that connection available to you, then your first security needs are solved because you've got some sort of availability. So that's one of the things we try to solve with TETRA security. And the other ones are to do with mobility and group communications. So we need a security solution that can respond dynamically to somebody moving around a network, registering in a different place on the network, and fixed communication system security doesn't usually lend itself to doing that. It doesn't usually lend itself to the mobility. And the other aspect is the group communications. We need a way of securing one-to-many communications, which again is not such the same sort of problem on a fixed network. So you find fixed network security and mobile network security are different, simply because the problems it's trying to solve are different. Now, if you want to get into the TETRA versus 3G, 4G security, I'll support what you said. The security on TETRA is better. When we started doing TETRA security, we had the advantage of seeing what GSM 2G security had done. And so we were able to fix some of the shortcomings of the air interface security on that, and then overlay the end-to-end security, which some of the more secure TETRA users need. When 2G was developed into 3G, they took some of the weaknesses of being able to spoof an infrastructure. And because of the way the network works and because of the problems they were solving, they solved it in a slightly different way, which is not, in an underlying way, it's not as strong as the solution we put with TETRA. So the basic air interface security on TETRA is stronger than you find on the 3G, 4G networks. What we're doing with the mission-critical communications, now if I move on to my 3GPP role and with rolling out the mission-critical applications, first of all, it will overlay end-to-end security on top of everything provided by the mobile network sitting underneath. so we can gain the end-to-end confidentiality. And there's some quite clever mechanisms for doing that, allowing to have end-to-end security with any other member of the organization that you are sharing the network with. We still have some issues at the lower layers, the protecting the signaling, who I am, who I'm calling. And again, the security of that is not as strong as you'll find with TETRA. Now, there is a distinction here. If you're running over a private LTE network and have full control of all of the security mechanisms that LTE gives you, as well as the end-to-end mechanisms you put on, it's a good solution. The issue comes is if you don't trust the underlying network, and this is the commercial carrier case, then the separation isn't quite as good. So the mission-critical user doesn't have quite as good security as he would have on a TETRA network. So it's slightly use case dependent, and somebody that puts in their own LTE network and overlays their own mission-critical services on it today has got pretty good control of the security and a pretty good solution. It's in the split case where we're still not quite there yet with the security solution that came out of Release 13. That's probably too much detail, but I think that's okay.
There you are, sir. You heard it from the horse's mouth.
Well, this is where
that as a panel, we don't know what we're talking about in that respect, but Dave Chaterley does.
they all look confused, didn't they? They absolutely. I was sat back there as the audience.
Question,
I was like,
Robin.
The panel
Question.
of guests. Like, wow.
There's a question.
Yeah. Go on, hang on. Trip over. Sir, your views.
I have a quick question for Jason. I'm wondering in which cases, when you choose using OPEX model or CAPEX model, especially investing in TETRA is a huge investment. So is there some criteria or that you put in your mind before choosing between these two models?
Sorry, could you repeat
That
the
clear?
question again? The acoustics are quite difficult.
Yeah, choosing between two models, OPEX or CAPEX. In your case, as this investment is huge, do you consider having it OPEX and you make the project by outsource it to other company, or you have it as CAPEX,
OPEX
investing by
versus
yourself?
CAPEX. Would you
So this, Jason,
have
is
had a service provider option?
Yeah.
this is all about, do you just buy it in from the Vodafones, the EEs, whatever, or as the gentleman said, you bought your own private TETRA network, lots of spondoolies. Yeah. Or what made you go one way or the other?
That's a very good question. So I've been at Heathrow probably about 18 months. Heathrow's been in operation since the late 40s. It used to be a grass runway, operated in the Second World War, and obviously it's grown a lot since then. So there are lots more airlines. We have over 100 airlines at Heathrow, and we have 75,000 employees that come to Heathrow every day in order to support the operation. So that's a big mix. That's mission critical users and also business critical users. At the moment, our analog system enjoys the patronage of probably about 1,500 radio users at the moment, which is a small percentage of an opportunity that I can clearly see. So I've developed a strategy for Heathrow for the next 10 to 15 years, which does include broadband, but that's quite a few years away. However, the way that I see that TETRA can be utilised would be to service the mission-critical users fundamentally, and there's a real opportunity for business-critical users to use TETRA also. So we do have a lot of OPEX in our radio landscape because Heathrow operates another 4 or 5 radio platforms at Heathrow. They're serviced and maintained by one company. So there is an awful lot of CAPEX and OPEX associated there. So my vision is to decommission all of those and over the next few years build a TETRA platform, one communication, mission and business critical for all users, and then once we've bedded down our mission critical users, open up opportunities for business critical users also. So although it's our workhorse for operations, there is an opportunity there for some return on investment, and we will actually start generating revenue as an RVNO. We've all heard about MVNOs, so an RVNO model that we can employ there, radio virtual network operator selling services to other third parties. So at Heathrow, we have another 4 or 5 radio platforms, as I've just said, but also at Heathrow, other radio providers provide services to end users, and I know of another 3 platforms there, PMR platforms, and also we know of other airlines that have their own radio platforms. So all of a sudden, the TETRA ecosystem, once embedded at Heathrow, will open up lots of opportunity for other businesses that don't have to try and expand their infrastructure themselves. So automatically they get rid of their own CapEx, they get rid of their own OpEx, and they can enjoy all the features that a mission critical or business critical system can provide for them.
There you go. That's a cool answer to that question. He clearly has thought about this stuff over the time. So we've got 5 more minutes. We've got 5 more minutes, and we've got Jed over here.
That's a question.
Gonna come over here. Keep me going. Keep me awake. We're all struggling with a time difference, so apologies if we're all looking a bit jaded. Jed.
We see a lot of work in transport in relation to smart vehicles and autonomous vehicles. How do you see the communications industry supporting this innovation going forward?
Oh,
think
wow.
that's a
Question.
question for
Driverless
Joachim.
cars, gents, and all this stuff. You know, how's that going to change the communications industry and what we do? Joachim.
Yeah, I can take this. It is, let's say, in the autonomous or let's say assistant driving topic, it is crucial that you have a network which is available at least across the highways, and it's very much critical that you have a very low latency in the entire network. If you ask a car manufacturer, they would usually argue we don't need a network at all, and this is particularly true to the extent that the car is driving, let's say, 60, 70 kilometers per hour. If you want to drive faster, then you have so much distance that the local sensors are not capable to recognize if there is an issue ahead of the car or whatever. So you need an assistance from the network, which is then usually true when you are at the highway. And you might have heard we have executed a trial in around Munich in Germany, together with Continental and with some others, where we have demonstrated how today's LTE network enhanced with so-called mobile edge computing, which is compute power very close to the eNote Bs, to the antennas, so that we can provide very low latency. And then you can reduce the latency already in LTE down to 20 milliseconds, which will allow you to drive fast, and you get the alerts that something happens in front of you, so that the car can brake out automatically or can even accelerate automatically in time. So from that perspective, it is needed. It's less an issue on the bandwidth. It's more an issue on the latency, and the network needs to support this. There are some use cases where you also need high throughput if you are updating, let's say, content in the car or even software in the car, but this is also less an issue of a high available network.
Okay, excellent. So there you go. And it is an interesting It is a very interesting topic, particularly with regards to how you scale these networks. So we are out of time now. We will carry on with questions a little bit later. Plus, everybody in the audience, we have a transportation roundtable lunch between 1 and 2. So I believe it's an open invite. There's going to be food served at the back, and we carry on some discussions and things. So Sam, I know, can save the question till lunchtime, where we give him a nice big lunch and he'll ask some more for sure. I would just like to thank you all. I'd particularly like to thank Jackson, who we sort of press ganged a bit to come up and join in the panel, but clearly added some value, gave a different perspective. Just a round of applause for all the panelists, please.